Recording in progress.
Good afternoon, everybody. Good afternoon, and welcome to Paul's Monday Market Update number 191 for
Hello, can you hear
Monday,
me?
21st of July. Just bear with me a moment. Just as I said, welcome to Paul's Monday Market Update 191 for Monday, 21st of July, 2025. I hope you're all well. Hope you've had a good weekend and ready for what's going to be a rather busy, full-on week ahead. As always, if you're here live in the room, just want to confirm that you can hear my voice and you can see the slides. For those of you joining us for the first time, the Monday Market Update is just that. Okay, it is me flying through as much as I can fit in the next 25-30 minutes, looking at strength and weakness within FX indices and commodities markets, looking at a few charts of interest on what is a week where we really kick off this sort of Q2 earnings reports, and then a look at the live market. It's not a signal service, it's not a trade recommendation service, it's just me sharing what I'm looking at the moment, which might be of interest to yourself. As always, you're very welcome here, but just remember that you're always responsible for your own trading decisions. If you want a little bit more help and support, or if you in particular today, this evening, I'll be running a workshop looking at sort of intraday trading of the US indices. That's at 6:30 London time this evening. Okay, if you wish to join, there's a QR code there, or there's a bit.ly code, or you can just ping me for more information. And as usual, I'll be doing the Active Trades Monday Market Matters webinar this afternoon, London, 2 o'clock. Today, we're going to look at focusing on, is trading an art or a science? You're welcome to join us. You can either join us on the website or through that QR code there. And I'm still doing my sort of regular Wednesday evening Market Pulse weekly update for Admiral Market. You can join me on the QR code there. Take a look at global indexes, look at the dollar, look at sterling, look at UK stocks, and you're welcome to join us. Okay, all right, let's dig into the bits that are clipped out of my own weekend worksheets and models. The whole idea being that's to give me an idea of where's the strength and where's the weakness, primarily in FX markets, but also in indices and commodities markets. So what is this showing us? Well, here we are. We're into week 30 of the year, starting 21st of July. Where's the strength and where's the weakness? Well, in terms of strength, there's not really been any major sort of change over the weekend. We still have Swiss franc top of the pile, and we still have euro. Oh, excuse me, bit of hay fever, and euro there in second spot. All right. At the bottom of the pile, we still have Japanese yen, okay, at bottom of the pile, and we still have dollar there. I do wonder whether this is going to change this week. Part of that is we had a little bit of a surprise, okay, in the Japanese upper house elections yesterday, hence why we have seen overall some Japanese yen strength come back into the market. But we'll look at that in a moment when we look at the live markets. US dollars there, even though US dollars had a little bit of a, the last couple of weeks have been stronger. It was a little bit weaker, okay, going into the start of this week, hence why we can see dollar is weak and, on the sort of, let's say, the intraday basis for the start of this particular week. We've got the com dollars here in the middle, all right, with Canadian dollar and Aussie dollar at the top of that. And then sterling remains in fifth place, okay? But, we do have a bit of, we've got a bit of UK data this week. We've got Mr. Bailey speaking tomorrow. Then we'll have the manufacturing and services along with the Euro, French, German and US PMIs, but we also got UK retail sales on Friday. So there's a bit of UK data, and I'll be intrigued to see what impact that has on the overall UK. But as you can see, it's been sliding away there. And when I look at the sort of sterling pairs, from where we were, sort of a month ago, where they were all what I would call buying environments, STAM 1, STAM 2. Now we are more slipping into basically much more selling environments there, okay, for sterling pairs. And that's give me an indication of how the how sterling is sliding away there, especially when we see that, euro, okay, is still very much, as you can see, still very much kind of on the buying side of the curve. Okay, so and that's what we're looking at the FX. And as I said, as always, we'll have a look at the dollar. We might have a look at yen, and we always finish off with a look at the sterling. When I look at indices and commodities, interestingly, S&P, NASDAQ, and Russell have all gone back into strategic buying environments. The rest, the momentum is on the slide there. We've had an okay start to the week, but I think this is going to be a very busy week. Okay, there was an awful lot of let's say formal data coming out across the economic calendar, but then of course we also have the sort of Q2 earnings reports. They really sort of kick in terms of quantity and quality, shall we say, and we'll look at that in a moment in the charts of interest. And then naturally, there is always some element of the kind of lingering shenanigans going on about the sort of Trump tariffs. Okay, so you've got all of these, let's say, layers upon layers that are adding an element of interest and complexity to markets. But we'll look at the live markets in a moment anyway. Okay, let's move on to some charts of interest. As I said, there's really quite a lot of Q2 earnings reports really gets into its stride this week. There's an awful lot of, let's say, big names coming on, but of course, one of them would be like Google or Alphabet. They are Wednesday after the market, so I'm always curious to have a look at, right, well, what's the score with them as they go into those earnings reports. Listen, the way I look at it, this is the weekly chart, and it was in a great trend. What ended that trend was the, nice big weekly bearish engulfing candle, key reversal candle at a big round number. Okay, that's, I've often said when I'm looking at things like equities, I'm intrigued to see how does price react at significant levels. In the same way, this was a lovely kind of 3-bar reversal off the 50 and off the kind of 150 sort of resistance turn support. Up here at 200, that printed a really very strong, okay. And what happened is we drifted all the way down there, okay, pretty much as like a lot of the sort of drift into Liberation Day. This was, of course, that's the sort of Trump in the 90-day when he put the 90-day pause on, and you can see from being down here, sort of trading we have worked our way up. Okay, we have worked our way up there. Pre-market as is at 187, and then, as I said, sort of people will be interested to see what their earnings are like on Wednesday. Will it be enough to get it above the 190? I don't think it'll be enough to instantly shove it back up to the big round number, but I think if those numbers and let's say the market's still interested in basically AI. If they've come out with some anything with the words AI in it, that's going to probably give them a bit of either a bit of a bump, or it'll be used to basically soften the blow if the numbers aren't as great. But as this week, lots of big numbers coming out, and this will give us an indication into the sort of the health of many of those, not just the US tech companies, okay, but also of the general economy. One of the other ones that are releasing earnings reports are after the close on Wednesday is Tesla. Okay, I don't think I need to tell people who Tesla are these days. Kind of the way I look at this here is, this has been quite a volatile work, over the last year or so, I'd say. There was the fantastic, run up here in terms of the run up to the kind of presidential election last year, and then we had the kind of the rollover running into the sort of Liberation Day, and really, I would say we were pivoting around that kind of 200 period moving average, the green 200 period moving average there. Yeah, we did pop, but it has not filled its way through. Okay, it's not followed through in the way many of the other stocks have. I think a lot of that is some of the kind of, let's say, the kind of almost like the media shenanigans that we see going on between Trump and Musk. Also, the people trying to understand what, if any, impact the tariffs would have on Tesla in terms of the car production, and also I think investors just wanting Musk to basically focus on his company rather than getting his finger stuck in politics. All of that has kind of, as I said, have had a play on why Tesla hasn't flowed as high as many of its other tech competitors, etc. And I would look at that at the moment. At the moment, I see that as we're coiling up. All right, we're coiling up with a support level of $300 there, and so people are going to be waiting to say, okay, is that numbers good? What does Musk have to say for himself? All right, what does he have to say about it? Is that enough to basically sort of reignite some love for Tesla to basically break this kind of almost like this triangle and start driving its way back up towards 400, or do sentiment sort of is and then basically not only does 300 go, but I actually think we'd probably move back down towards that weekly 200 period moving average. So we'll be looking at the moment. Price is above the averages. Okay, price is above the averages. So you'd be saying that at the moment, the bias is to the bullish side. It's a question of do the numbers support that? Okay, when we see them, in which case that might just give it a little bit of a bump higher. So we've had a look at a couple of tech stocks. We've also got a few aviation and aerospace and defence stocks. One of them being Lockheed Martin. They are there before the open tomorrow. Yeah, once again, Lockheed Martin has been a bit of a head scratcher. All right. Initially, with the Trump win, we had that kind of great move, sort of higher, then punctuated by this, huge, big, that's a bearish engulfing, bearish key reversal candle, and you can see that basically over there we just drifted our way down, back down, sort of towards that kind of 420, 450 weekly 200 period moving average. You do have to wonder, is that fundamental? Is that technical? Is that basically just sentiment in terms of Trump? Boeing has more sway with Trump than Lockheed Martin. There are kind of rumors about the US Marines changing their purchase of F-35s from Bs to Cs. There's talk about the US Air Force basically start to curtail their buys of F-35As. Lockheed Martin did not win the new sixth gen fighter competition. All right, that went to who did they go to Boeing, and they haven't bid for the Navy sixth generation aircraft. They are not part of the B-21 Raider. They're not part of the KC-46 tanker, etc. So, whilst the F-35, there's still orders coming in for that. It would appear that there's not much joy there, okay, in terms of what you're looking at for the future with Lockheed Martin, and I think that maybe that's reflected in the share price here. Certainly, the 200 period moving average has acted as real dynamic support there, hasn't it? You can see it's worked its way there, but equally, it's not. There's not much to get excited about there, I would say. Okay, so perhaps maybe the data come out, maybe they'll release some new technology or some new orders that will push price back up towards that $500 level. That's what I'd be looking for as a target. Can that be a magnet? But if the numbers underwhelm, well then I think we drift back to that 200 period moving average, and then you're looking at, let's clear this, is it going to act as it has acted as great support over the last basically all of this year, 6-7 months? Will it continue to do that if the numbers underwhelm on where is it, Wednesday? No, it's tomorrow before the open. So you might want to keep an eye on that. Yep, another defense company, RTX, Raytheon. All right, I would always know them as Raytheon. Right, they make rockets, they make missiles, Patriot missiles, Sidewinder missiles, AMRAAM missiles. Okay, and if you hadn't been watching the news over the last couple of years, 6 months, 2 years, well, there's been an awful lot of missiles and rockets shot. Okay, whether it be the Ukrainians, whether it be the Israelis, whether it be anybody else. Okay, So, there's been an awful lot of, let's say, inventory usage when it comes to those rockets and missiles, and people wanting to buy more of them. And as you can see, on this weekly chart of Raytheon, that hasn't done any harm at all, as it you can see from where we were trading down at 70. All right, trading down at 70 just sort of 18 months or so ago. You can see now where we are, 150. All right, above $150 and continuing higher. Okay, I just look at all these kind of swing points. These are still showing that we're in that uptrend. And then once again, okay, like Lockheed Martin, they are reporting earnings this week. So is that going to be, good numbers, which keeps it going that way? There's nothing I see there to basically change my view. Remember what I always say: if you're a new trader, good trends leap off the chart at you. Okay, and when they do, and find a way to ride them. Okay, the challenge you have is that markets tend to only trend 20 to 30% of the time. But as I said, when they're in a good trend, don't fight it. Find a way to ride it. Okay, and you can see from there at that moment that is continuing in its uptrend. My only concern would be that maybe we're starting to go a bit parabolic. When you start pulling a long way from the 20-period moving average, things start to get a little bit unstable. But definitely still bullish. I'm finishing on another aerospace company, aviation company. Thursday before open is American Airlines Group. Now, in the past we've looked at a couple of other airlines, haven't we? So in particular, ones like Delta or United, or kind of IAG. Sorry, over here. This is a monthly chart, all right? This is a monthly chart of American Airlines Group. And I put it up on the monthly just to give you some perspective. Listen, look at this. Back here, 2017, 2018, we were up, okay, in that monthly uptrend, up towards around $60 there. And, really, before COVID, right, we basically were already in a downwards trend, okay? And $10 has been a significant support level, okay? It's been a significant support level for 5 years now. And even though you can see there over the last couple of years, we have touched that there again. And $20 a big round number there. It's not even managed to basically get there, has it really? Okay, you're up about $18. So the way I look at this here is that we are beneath the averages. All right, we're beneath the 20, beneath the 50, beneath the 200. If I was using a very, very simplistic measure of value, okay, and I know lots of people might suck their teeth, we are way beneath the sort of monthly 200-period moving average. Okay, so in a very simplistic way, you could look at that as being undervalued, and basically, a buy at 10 with a target of 22.50. Okay, kind of returning to value. And as I said, that is a very, very simplistic way of doing it, but sometimes that actually helps. All right, sometimes the simpler the method, the clearer it is for you to make a decision on what to do, and the clearer the plan is. And so the clearer the plan, the easier it is to execute it. But certainly, okay, those numbers are coming up on Thursday. You might want to have to look to see, is there any reprieve? Okay, as I said, good numbers get it above that monthly 20, which starts to make a difference. And bad numbers, then I'd start to be looking at as sort of drifting back down towards 10 again. That's what I'll be looking at there. All right, so there you go. A few more charts of interest than normal, but as I said, it's a very, very busy earnings week, and there's lots going on. So hopefully, some there, add them to your watch list, see how they play out this particular week. But let us switch over. So just bear with me for a moment, and we'll switch across. So let me just go and bring up the. Let's bring up the live markets here. So I'm hoping you can still hear me. I'm hoping you can see the charts. This is a profile with indexes. So Dow on the weekly, NASDAQ on the weekly, S&P 500 on the weekly, Russell on the weekly, FTSE on the weekly, Japanese Nikkei, DAX on the weekly, and oil. Oil, I'd say, it's squeezed there between sort of the 50 and the 20 on the weekly chart. There's nothing in this kind of this month's worth. Okay, those last 3-4 weeks that gets me terribly excited after that big sort of bearish engulfing candle there. I'm not massively excited by that. There's other things I can spend my time on. But if we quickly look at S&P 500, all right, if we look at how we close last week, that is the highest weekly close ever on the S&P 500. All right, that's what you look at. So that's the way I look at it on a weekly chart. That is still in a bullish uptrend. Okay, and as I said earlier, we'll be looking to see these big numbers this week. Is that going to actually continue to? Is that going to continue to support that? Okay, I was interested because last week I was looking at this was just going a little bit sideways, but when you look at that weekly candle, it was a strong bullish close, the highest weekly close ever. Regardless of people's concerns about tariffs, you've got that on the S&P 500 and the same on the NASDAQ. Okay, having had a little bit of a indecision, well, we just continued higher. NASDAQ, okay, that's still, as I said, still bullish there. The Dow, we pulled back. Okay, it's not rallying like the Nasdaq and the SP, but if I look at the daily charts, we bounced off the 20 there, didn't we? We had a little bounce, okay, and you have to wonder, right? Will the data this week help it push back up to those kind of recent highs? And the Russell just is holding above its 50. Look to Japan. Well, as I said, there was a little bit of interest from the sort of because the Japanese elections, but I don't see any immediate response from that at the. Don't see any immediate response from that at the moment. We'll have a look at the yen at the moment if we've got time. If I look at the DAX, it's still above its highs. The price action is I wouldn't exactly say the daily price action is filling me with joy, but it remains above its highs. It's still holding there. That is a bit of an inside bar doji. So maybe we'll get an interest. Remember, not only have we got PMIs this week for Europe, but we've also got the Euro ECB press. The at the moment, people aren't expecting any further cuts. Okay, but of course, we'll wait to see what that comes out on Thursday, and maybe that's why maybe that's why last week was a little bit of indecision because people are waiting to just get confirmation from Miss Lagarde on Thursday. Close to home, FTSE. Okay, yeah. You look at that last week, that is the highest weekly close. Yep, there's wicks to the north side, but it was the highest weekly close. It's a weekly candle, it's staying above its highs for the moment. So, that's the way I would be looking at it. Yep, the daily chart doesn't exactly look overly exciting, but as I think I said, a couple of weeks ago, I just need to see it get to those highs, and then if it builds a base before it decides to move on. Now, as I said, we've got Bailey speaking tomorrow. We've got PMIs Thursday and retail sales on Friday, whether that'll have an impact. But at the moment, I just see that as holding above that kind of 89.10 level, okay, flirting with the big round number of 9,000 and waiting to see if there's any data that basically gives us a further bump higher. We look at some of the commodities. Bang, gold. Okay. Yeah, it's not as exciting as it has been, but what I look at there is that the last couple of weeks the lows have been higher. All right, they are what I would call momentum pin bars, as in they are supporting the continuation of the trend. That's what I'll be looking at it, even though as we said and we looked on the daily chart. It's holding on above the 50 period moving average, and even the 20 and the 50. That's almost like a little bit of a as sentiment is coiling up there. Okay, everything's getting a bit dull now. Is that because we're entering a sort of an early sort of summer malaise, or is that because really we're just waiting for the catalyst of information? I think there's kind of more central bank speaking, not this week but the week after. Whether that central bank is the sort of catalyst for the next move, we shall have to wait and see. But it remains bullish, but I wouldn't exactly say there's anything really there exciting. Whereas, silver has been exciting the last few weeks, but even last week, okay, this is silver on the weekly chart. That's a high wave candle. It's a bit of indecision there. Okay, that's what I'd be looking at. Yeah, certainly we came off it, and if you look at last week's price, nudging higher, aren't we? Today we've pushed a little bit higher there. Okay, but yeah, it's more exciting than gold, but not much. Bitcoin, okay, it's as we spoke about last week, it's held above 100, punched up to 120 last week. I would look at that as a reversal pin bar, but one swallow doesn't make a sum or any of that. The price action there, I'd be looking at that. That's a little bit. It's just in a little bit of a block there. It looks like it's just holding on underneath 120. All right, holding on underneath 120, and so then the question becomes, for oil, for gold, for silver, for Bitcoin, what impact, what if any impact, is the US dollar going to have in terms of what we're looking for? So let's go and have a look at the dollar now. All right, see what the score is. Boom, boom, boom. Let's come on. Let's bring up the drawing code. Here we go. It's taking a little bit of time. Clearly, my computer's already switched off into summer malaise already there, and wants to have a little bit of wants to have its own summer break, but it's going to have to wait a couple of weeks. So just bear with me 1 second. Come on, let's have this. There we go. Finally decides to show. All right. So this is my dollar profile. Dollar profile here. Aussie dollar on the daily, Euro dollar on the daily, pound dollar on the daily, dollar Swiss on the daily, Kiwi dollar on the daily, dollar CAD, dollar yen, and then of course dollar index on the weekly. All right. Let's start with the dollar index on the weekly. Okay. Downtrend, pullback. Okay. That doesn't mean doesn't mean it's over. It just basically, we've had a couple of weeks of working its way up. If we go down to the daily chart, there we go. If you look at that, July has so far been a very strong dollar month. Now, of course, when you put it into the perspective of how it's done over the years, it's a pittance. However, we said this last week, is that of pushing up to the 50, for me, convinced that there was true dollar strength in play. I needed to see us up above that daily 50 first, and then heading towards the big round number of 100. And you can see we clearly haven't done that. And if anything, we're returning to this supporting trend line. And now we're going to look at and see, okay, is this supporting trend line, is this going to hold? In which case, I think maybe, let's get the old drawing tool, does it do a little bit like this before it moves on, okay, with the sort of dollar strength, or does it break down? In which case, if it breaks through that, well, then my first target would be the 20 period moving average, which has acted as both resistance and support, and then you're moving down towards those lows again. Okay, so it's going to be an interesting couple of days, I think. All right, see, does this trend line hold? If it doesn't, do we how far do we go to the 20 and to the down? And then that, of course, has an impact on how we see Aussie. Okay, has weakened against the dollar, but if you look at the last day or two, we've had a little bit of a bump. Kiwi dollar overall has been down, but last day or two has shown us up a little bit. Euro dollar has been mostly down, but the last day or two has been sort of a green. Dollar against Canadian, dollar strengthening, but the last day or two, Canadian there, hopefully starting to see a bit of a pattern emerge. Dollar against Swiss franc, okay, and dollar had strengthened against the Swiss franc, which we saw from the STAM is the strongest, but even these last couple of days, it's a little bit bearish there. Okay, we'll look at yen and cable in a minute. So this is an inflection point here, okay, and I wonder whether it just doesn't have the strength as we go into that summer malaise to shift above the daily 50. In which case, we drift our way lower, and that's fine. It's going to do what it wants to do, and I'll trade whatever the market wants to give me. All right. So before we do that, let's see if I can get up Japanese yen here and see if this will pull up. We'll have a quick look, because it's been an interesting start to the week for the Japanese after the after the upper house elections. There have been fantastic trends on the yen daily charts, okay, for about the last 6 weeks. I've talked about it there, and you can see it there, kind of euro yen, Aussie yen, Kiwi yen, the pound yen, and in particular CAD yen and Swiss franc yen. Okay, let's take a look at that. They have been fantastic, but what we want to see is, these elections, is that going to change? Is that going to change the party? Is the party over? And what you might say, okay, just looking at the initial reaction is, well, yeah, perhaps that might be the case. I've put this onto the 4-hour charts. Dollar yen, a little bit of a gap there, and now basically yen strength. Okay, pound yen. Okay, pound yen, a little bit of a gap now, an element of yen strength. Even Swiss yen, okay, it's a gap and now an element of yen strength. Same with the euro. Okay, same with the Aussie against the yen, same with the Kiwi against the yen. Look at the CAD yen, okay? That's what we're looking at. So admittedly, part of it can be just an immediate reaction to the upper house election, but clearly maybe that yen weakness is coming to an end because it looks like there's going to be a change, okay? Now, kind of a major change as they've kind of voted in the populist party, all right, and that's probably an indication of sort of the deeper structural issues in Japan that need to be addressed. But I'm just looking at here in the trend and stuff, and I'll be looking at, see all those 4-hour 50 period moving average, all right, all those 4 hour, which have acted as, here on the Aussie and acted as great support. Is that now going to turn over and flip, right? Is that going to flip from being support to being resistance as on another leg down? So I think yen was going to be an interesting one to watch this week to your watch list. Okay, so whilst maybe yen is at a turning point driven by a change in sentiment based upon a change in the politics of the place and what's going on with the sterling. As I said, we looked at it in the STAM, and it's kind of from being top of the dog, sort of just over a month ago. That party is now well and truly over. There was kind of an interesting intraday session this morning for me. Okay, a couple of wins, a couple of scratches. It was just quite curious price action. But let's have a little look at it, all of this on the daily, so we can get a bit of an idea here. A bit short on the, I was a bit short on the FTSE. There's some nice short on the FTSE for me. Right, okay. Let's have a look. Cable. A bit like we've talked about, there's been sterling weakness. Today has actually sort of, we've had a bit of sterling strength, and I think that's just an element of a bit of dollar weakness. We might actually even get, looking at that, if that continues, we might even get an inverse failed pinbar play there. Pound against yen, all right, we've talked about it. The overall trend has been up, but I wonder whether that will continue. Pound against Swiss franc, that has been Swiss franc strength, pound weakness. We've had a little bit of a bump the last couple of days, but and today's not been too bad, but it's still a case of we've got that Swiss franc strength, sterling weakness. Pound against the Aussie, we have had a couple of days, all right, a couple of days of some sterling strength, but overall for this month, the trend has been down. Pound against New Zealand dollar, I would just look at that as being coiled. Pound against Canadian dollar, that has mostly been, sterling weakness, Canadian strength. Yep, we've had a couple of interesting days, but, it will take more than that. And as I said, we've got a bit of sterling data coming out here to sort of see what the score is there. And then finally finish on euro against sterling. As I said, this has been a daily chart. You can see that euro has strengthened and is now sort of up. It's been flirting first and second place on the STAM, whereas sterling has been drifting down from first and second down to now fifth. And that's reflected there. Remember, I want to buy strength and sell weakness. I wonder whether we're getting a little bit of a bull flag there. Okay, is that a little bull flag on the daily chart? And what I would be interested to see is, as I said, Thursday I think might be a bit of a day for this, because we've got French PMIs, German PMIs, Euro PMIs, British PMIs, and also the ECB rate and conference, and so and then UK retail sales Friday. So I wonder whether Thursday, Friday would be more of an interesting day for trading euro and sterling pairs. That's the way I would. That's the way I particularly look. Okay, there you go, ladies and gentlemen. Let's draw it to a close there. Okay, as always, as I said, I'm flying through as much as I can. It's a very busy week, so I appreciate that I'm just literally flying. That's why the session's always recorded, and it'll be on my blog, okay, and on the YouTube channel, okay. So if you want to watch it again or just to read cover pieces, then you can do so that way. Listen, it's going to be a busy week, all right? Busy week. So make sure that you're on top of your risk management. Make sure you're on top of your news flow and your order flow. I hope you have yourselves a fabulous trading week, and I will speak to you soon. Many thanks.